So my name is Amy DePoint. I am very excited that you are here or listening to this recording later. I am very passionate about the Boundary Waters and helping anybody who wants to get up there, so they can have an amazing experience, a safe, prepared experience. Hopefully it works now. Um, I wanted to be, so a lot of people have questions about clothing and what might be appropriate and what not. So I wanted to go through, I'm gonna hit a bunch of people's questions with this answer. So what I do is I use about a 10 liter, sometimes I use a stuff sack, sometimes I use like a little travel cube, but I usually get all of my gear into about 10 liters. Now, I'm kind of a minimalist. I take a look at the weather and I have a good understanding of what's coming. If it's gonna be really rainy and wet, I might bring some extra pants because it's miserable being wet. My trip a week ago was really wet and really stormy. And I did anticipate that. I brought a little bit more than I usually do. In hindsight, I might have brought a thicker pair of fleece leggings, but I try to keep it minimal. So I usually bring in, now this is for a week-long trip, so 4 nights, Monday through Friday. And I bring in the pants that I wear along with, sports bra, underwear, and a tank top or a t-shirt, and then I always have like a lightweight button-up shirt. This is good for sun. Sometimes people bring like hoodies, like sun hoodies. Those are super great. They're nice and thin. Anything that is going to dry very easily. So we're avoiding cotton, and we're looking more for the synthetic or wool. So a natural fiber that is excellent for any backcountry camping is wool, because if it is wet, it can still stay warm. It doesn't smell like a synthetic fiber would, especially after days of use in the same thing. Sometimes that's really nice for you and for all of the rest of the people you're with. I usually bring a fleece, but like a wool sweater would be great. Even in summer, you can have really cool nights. Now, if every night looks like it's going to be in the 80s, you're probably not going to need a wool sweater. But do anticipate rain, chilling you, or the weather. I also then pack in a pair of shorts, underwear for every day. You do get wet. Do not bring anything that you don't want to get wet into the Boundary Waters. And footwear as well. Just know that you're going to get wet. Your things are going to need to dry out quickly. And yeah, and along with that, if you put them in a dry pack, it can save your clothes from getting wet because of storms or whatnot, or just, being out and about. All right, let me take a look. Okay, they also asked about, and I do like yoga leggings because they can also act as a base layer. But base layers are really great. So something that sits close to your skin, and then another pant to go on top of that. And then you can use your rain pants, because everybody should bring in full rain gear, not a poncho. Those are useless in the rain. So pants and a jacket. You can borrow them from others, or I usually get things on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. I don't know if that's still a thing. But that is something that I would not, don't skip on that. And your rain pants can be another barrier to the elements. Even if it's not raining, it will stop all the wind, which takes away your heat from your body. Okay, I think that's the questions on the pants. And then shoes. So the questions about shoes are, what is going to be best? So best for in camp and portages. There's a lot of opinions about this. This is what I tell my people who I bring up. I want them to have shoes when we portage. I find that there's sharp sticks, sharp rocks, fishing hooks on the paths. I've seen all of it in my years, and you have to walk out. I'm not carrying you out. Nobody's carrying you out. You have to walk out. So I do ask for shoes for the portages. Now, I had an amazing conversation with the barefoot paddler out there when I was out there just a week and a half ago. He does 100% of everything barefoot. And that works for him. But if I'm going in with a group, I'm asking for shoes in the portages. And some people need like a full-on hiking boot. Don't recommend waterproof for that because you need the water to be able to come out easily. But just a cheap hiking boot might work. I wear water shoes. They're close to barefoot water shoes. I need that protection, but I also like to feel how I'm walking and where I'm walking. Now, I've done that for decades, and that works for me. I don't know if it always will. I might switch to more of a hiking boot for portages if need be, but everything will get wet. There's always wet foot entry in the Boundary Waters, and you put yourself at risk if you try to avoid it. Slipping, tipping over the canoe. I've seen that many times, or whatnot. So be prepared for that. In camp, you would like to probably switch out of your wet shoes that you've been in on the trail all day. I usually have a waterproof, like soft tennis shoe. Some people choose to wear their wool socks and their sandals, like a Chaco sandal, so their heel is secured into their shoe. That might work really well as well. The reason why I use a waterproof, like just like a trail runner or low hiking shoe is for rain. So then I am waterproof, sort of, from the top down. So that's what I choose to do. Hope that made sense. Does anybody else have questions about clothing for in the Boundary Waters? I'm going to give a second. Well, I will come back to that if you do. I'm also going to, if everybody can see my chat, you can also, in case this isn't working correct, you can send your messages here. All right. Or your questions here. All right. So I had a lot of questions about this actually, about permethrin. So that is something you can use to treat the fabric, like your clothing, socks, pants, shirt, to become bug repellent. It's like a bug repellent. It's a neurotoxin for the little critters. So when they get near you, they are repelled. Little brains get scrambled. And it is also said to be a repellent for ticks, which I had good questions about. So the bug repellent I do, this last June, I went in, it was really mosquito-y. It was really buggy. And I did send my daughter and I into the Boundary Waters with head nets and also permethrin treated clothing. These aren't things that you wouldn't treat a swimsuit. It's not something you go swimming in or intentionally get wet. But I think it works really, really effectively. It minimizes the use of, DEET or other bug repellents that you might be needing to use up there, especially during the portages. That could even become a safety issue. So making sure you have adequate mosquito spray for the portages, or your permethrin treated clothing can be super helpful. So yeah, I do treat it. I think it's helpful. I've never treated my whole entire tent. Some people do that. But yeah, that might be something worth investing into. And it lasts for quite a while. I mean, we are, and the question also is asking about the ecosystems and, how it impacts that. We are entering a beautiful, near pristine space. Just us being in there can pollute the area. We practice leave no trace, which means, nobody I ever go with washes themselves in the water. We make sure that any dishes are done far away from any water source. We're really trying to minimize. But yes, we also use sunscreen. We also use bug spray, and that will get into the water systems, but hopefully in minute amounts. And the natural filtration system that is in the land will be helpful for filtering that out. But there is an impact. Us being there is an impact on the system, but we would like to minimize it when we're there. So I will leave that up for your preference. But I do use that. Okay. Any questions? Oh, and then ticks. Okay. So for ticks, they don't bother me very much. I know that they can be of great concern for others, especially if you may have suffered from Lyme, or other issues that can arise from mosquitoes, ticks, and be tick-borne. So what I do is I minimize my chances of getting them. So tucking my my pant legs into my socks, that would minimize it. Most of them are crawling from the up, right? I mean, I suppose really tall grasses, they could start closer up to the top, but they are always going to navigate up. Hence why we always check our hairlines and through our hair for ticks. And then we just do a tick check every night and just pluck them off. Usually they have not attached yet, but if they have, you're just going to pull very slowly, 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 and they release. That's it. You can watch the site for any infection. You can clean it afterwards with an alcohol swab. I do have a video about safety and the first aid kits. So take a look at that. But take a first aid kit and wipe it with alcohol swab if you want, or and then antibiotic cream. But I've never had an issue with them getting infected. But that would be something you'd want to watch out for, because again, you are out in the backcountry. There is not any medical help out there other than what you bring with you with your own first aid kit and knowledge. And if you bring a satellite or GPS device, you can reach out and get help. But you're going to think about prevention and what you can bring with you. So with that being said, I do always recommend wilderness first aid classes. I love them. I think they're so much fun and so worth it. And I do keep up on those. And of course, my CPR and first aid. I'm a healthcare practitioner, so I have to anyways. But for everybody, that is really good base knowledge. And I also do watercraft safety, but I'd say your first aid safety is if you're going to invest in any class with your time and your money, that would definitely be it. All right, so working a little first aid into the tick question. Let me see if there's any other follow-up for that one. No. All right. Does anybody else have any questions about little critters, mosquitoes, ticks? It's still worth it. I went up in June and it was so full of bugs. It was still 100% worth it. I loved it. I'm so glad I did a June trip this year. I would do it again. Watching all the flowers and everything emerge in this early summer, late spring is just phenomenal. I usually go end of season when there are no bugs. That would be end of August, September. Gorgeous weather. Highly recommend going at that time as well if you want to avoid bugs. But also, bug nets work really well for helping to keep them off you if that is an issue. Okay. Let's see if we have any more other questions. All right. We might not need a full hour, but these are good questions. Oh, sunscreen. So I say the sunscreen to use, my preference would be one that works well for you. You have water beating up from you from the bottom, water. You have sunlight, UV rays coming up from the bottom and also coming from the top. And there's no shade in the middle of a lake. So make sure to bring the sunscreen that is adequate for you. Whether that is Usually I bring a mineral sunscreen because that's what works really well for me. There are a lot of sunscreens that have minimal chemicals, so the non-chemical ones would leave less of an impact on the ecosystem for sure. So taking a look at the ingredients, if that is something that is important to you, which it is to me, but the supreme importance is one that works for you, that you don't have an allergic reaction to, and that will keep you safe. Because if you burn out there, again, this is like the theme, is there isn't any other first aid besides what you bring. And you still have to walk out your self. You have to carry your things out yourself. And if you're burned, that is going to pose a really big challenge. And it also runs you the risk of just heat illness and dehydration, which I was on a trip, and this one was with high schoolers, and the adult just didn't drink adequate water and didn't do adequate sunscreen, and he got dehydrated and really sick. And so then I was tending to him, and he was uncomfortable for a couple days. So take in the sunscreen that works for you and use it, and don't forget about it. Otherwise it's going to be a painful, crunchy trip out. And let's see. I might want to stick on this topic for a little bit. Let's see if anybody else has a question. Somebody else just came in. I'm not sure if there is an issue with the chat, so I am going to, you can always text me your questions, or raise your hand to ask a question, and I will unmute you and you can ask that way too. So just raise your hand. If I see it raised, I will check in. All right, so if you have questions or follow-ups that you would like to have about anything I have been talking about, just let me know. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about hydration. I didn't get a specific question about this. I don't know, but I see them in a lot of the forums a lot. And dehydration is one of the most easily avoidable things. And getting dehydrated has a huge impact on not only you, but your group. First of all, if I notice people getting cranky, we stop and take a drink. If you're already feeling thirsty, right, you're already dehydrated. So take some time and rehydrate. Just because you're like soaking in water all day doesn't mean you're magically hydrated. That's not quite how it works. Our skin doesn't really allow for that. That'd be fun though. That'd be great. And this is what I do to avoid any reason to not drink water. I bring things that you can put in your water to change the flavor. Okay, so there's no excuse. I always bring in electrolyte ones because I think it's helpful for absorption and replacing a lot of what we lose when we work really hard. Because when we're going to the Boundary Waters, unless you're just going in a short ways and base camping, which is also perfectly fine and amazing, a lot of us will go in a lot further into the interior, and it's hard work. All right, so bring little packets to put in the water. 2, know how to purify water. I'll have a couple stories since we'll have time today, it looks like. Oh, okay. I'm gonna figure out how to say your name too. I'm gonna finish the water bit and then I'm gonna come to you. So purifying water, I have a water filter. I use a gravity filter right now. I've used all sorts of filters. Use whatever you have, whatever your friend has, whatever you like to use. I use a large gravity filter because I usually bring in big groups. 2, I also have a purifier in the form of tablets. And I also bring in another UV light purifier. What's the name of it? It's just a little light that you stick in and it kills everything. 5, you can always boil water. You can boil it over the fire. You can boil it over your stove that you bring in. The water will taste far better over if you boil it over the stove than the fire. personally like smoky fire or smoky water, but I've drank it before when the purifier stopped working and there was no other way to get purified water. That's why the little like things like little tablets or packets of electrolytes or whatever, Kool-Aid, I don't care, come in handy if you ever need to do that. But know how to take care of your water source at camp and on the trail. So I always have the light purifier and the tablets on the trail, easy to access, whether they're right on the top of an easy access food bag or in my under seat bag with my first aid pack. That's usually where it is because there's no excuse to not have filtered water. And we usually run out if we're having long trail days or if our route unexpectedly becomes much longer than planned. Like when I was in there a week and a half ago, we had that huge storm come through and it really changed the lengths of our days when we were in. So we used a lot of the extra water purification methods, not necessarily the filter, but the water up there is so beautiful and clean. It was okay, but you can always use your bandana to filter it if you're filtering it out of a muddy space before you purify it. So no excuse. Okay, I really want to see. Hello, how are you? I think you can unmute now.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, it's Alina.
Alina. Thank you.
And thank you. This information is really helpful. I am very curious since you've mentioned first aid and all of the things many times, medical conditions and what medical conditions you would not recommend going into backcountry with. I have diabetes and I hike and kayak and do stuff like that all the time, but I've never camped in backcountry, for example. So I am wondering if that, since emergencies can start very fast without any kind of warning, I'm wondering if you've, traveled, if you've taken up other people with diabetes and like how's that handled if
That's a good question. So I have, and it's almost always covered in wilderness first aid. But I also know that you know your body best, and if what you can do at home, and maybe take a look at how your body reacts and behaves like when you're working out or when you've had really long days, and if you're able to deal with any of the blood sugar dips, highs or lows. And if you can do that in those circumstances at home, maybe you can do that out in the backcountry as well. But I guess you would know your body best. I just wouldn't automatically say that that rules you out because it doesn't. If you can manage it in the if you can manage it well and easily, then I think you could do it in the backcountry. But that is a good question, and that it would be a risk, and that would be something you might want to think about. Is there any preventative things that you could do, or do you feel like you can manage it well at home?
well the preventative thing is I always carry a lot of snack and juice, and when I went camping and kayaking at Apostle Islands, all of a sudden you're staying in bear country. And so I found myself not being able to have snacks that I needed to have with me in the tent. And I thought, well, that's interesting because obviously if you're camping and moving for many days where that might not be available, where then it becomes problematic. So that was my curiosity kind of, when so I've only looked at base camping, and it would be interesting to, like, I was wondering how
So in
it
the
would.
Apostle Islands, you usually have just bear boxes, right? That are in the campsite.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
but
you're saying like you need something on you, on your person
at
versus
all
having
times.
it in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's what I was curious, because even if I go hiking and I have a bear camp, I know that bears can smell that. It's just that if it's in
Sure.
my, so that's where, I'm curious.
I wonder if just like sugar water would be helpful for you or something that doesn't leave a scent, right? They're drawn to
Mm-hmm.
scented things. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so thinking maybe a little bit outside the box,
Okay.
maybe not the candy bar or the apple, but maybe something that would be able to be in like your drink container or something like that. But yeah, to have something that is a very good thing to know that during the night you have to watch your blood sugar levels as well and have
Yeah.
something on you at all times.
I've never thought of sugar water. I don't know why, because that's really true. That doesn't have a smell. Thank you. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I would pose that. I mean, I would be really curious to kind of pull and pool many
Mm,
different people's experiences
mm,
on that. You could go into one of any forum of any backcountry people, but I know that there's a lot for the Boundary Waters, and I guess I
mhm.
would pop that in and just see what
Okay.
other people's experiences were.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. Did you have any other questions about any of the other things?
No, I just like listening and kind of learning of what else you're gonna say. So,
Good, good. I can talk a little bit more about, let's see. I don't even okay. Okay. All right. If you don't have any more questions, I'm just gonna go back to the big screen then. Thank you.
mhm.
Okay, so a few of the other things, that is a really good question. I've never been asked that, but I think it would come down to the person. I have brought small children in that obviously have a different set of needs than an adult would, and I've had to shift and change the things I brought. A lot more of this in the first aid pack, or a lot more snacks, and also much older people, which also shifts and changes the needs of the group, because truly we are all one. We're individuals working together when we go into the backcountry. It's not a one for all or just individual thing. We have our individual experiences within the group. So um, that has to shift and change maybe the portages or where we go, and also, yeah, you're right, the food and the hydration and different needs that people would need, and if there are a lot of risk factors for the people in your group, again, I would highly encourage in doing a wilderness first aid. What she was talking about with the diabetes, we did have to do a whole lesson on that and what to do if something like that did come up. It's not just hypothermia and broken arms in the wilderness. It's also talking about some of the more uncommon, perhaps things that can come up but that can be life threatening, not just hatchets and chins. By the way, I don't bring hatchets into the Boundary Waters because I used to work at REI, and even in the forums, I just read about a bunch of people with hatchets in their legs and their feet today, and it happens. So I highly recommend not bringing one in or just using it as a wedge, which is what I used to do when I guided. Okay. Let me get back to my list of questions. 1 minute here. Okay. Sleeping bags. That's a really good question. Okay, I have comments on that. There are a couple different ways you can go about this. First of all, again, you're bringing everything in. Some people go into the Boundary Waters with a fully loaded canoe, and that is like nails on a chalkboard to me, because I don't want to portage all that gear. I don't want to make more than 2 trips across a portage. So I try to keep everything. I use portage packs, and a mid-size one, even a smaller one, should be able to fit 2 people's things in there. So a sleeping pad. I usually bring little teeny ones, but I have brought bigger ones, but I mean, they shouldn't be. ginormous. You would want to rethink that. And again, maybe borrow a backpacker's sleeping pad or something. Or think about hammock camping where you don't really need one. So, but that's a whole other topic. Um, so the sleeping bags, we usually bring in mummy bags for two reasons. One, they take up far less space, a lot less heavy, and three, they help to keep the warmth with you instead of having to fill up this huge space with your body heat to stay warm. It fits your body much better. Going in to a sporting goods place to try out their bags is also really important. Depending on your size and your needs, one bag will probably fit better than another. Like a men's one would be a little bit broader in the shoulders, but maybe a little bit more narrow in the hips, right? And vice versa. Women's might fit some bodies better than others, and different brands and different models are going to fit different bodies better. So we just got a brand new down Kelty one. You know who's using it? My tween daughter, because it's so narrow. I don't fit in there. I mean, I do, but it's not very comfortable. I prefer a different one. So try them out if you can, or be able to return it if you do an online order. Now, I have waterproof dry sacks. I like to bring in down. I love down, but I want you to keep this in mind. If you think that any wetness will come to your bag, you would want to go up in size, but you would want to use like a polyfill, like a synthetic sleeping bag. And there are some great synthetics that get down to almost the size of down. So they are out there. I usually bring in a down bag, but I put it in a waterproof stuff sack, because if down gets wet, it will compact and is pointless. It will be cold. You will be miserable. So consider that. And I always look at the weather. I have a lot of sleeping bags, but in general, if in doubt, if you're only going to get one and you want to buy one, I would get like a 20-degree bag. That will cover you for the most many seasons. And then I also have like 40, 50-degree bags, and I tend to bring those in more because I get really hot. Especially if I'm sleeping in a tent with other people. And I always look at the weather. So if it's going to be in like the 40s or even in the 30s at night, I would bring a warmer bag. If you're only going to buy one, always get slightly warmer. You can always unzip it. So, and then a compression sack will make that thing nice and small. So if you want to invest in some sort of compression sack that, for your sleeping bag, that would be really, really helpful. All right, so down or synthetic fill. It's up to you. I love down, but the synthetic fill has the advantage of if it gets wet, it's still usable. Down would not be. So you'd want to make sure that's in a waterproof bag. Okay. All right, so I use a 10-liter stuff sack for my clothes, right? But I think 12 or 13 is fine too. You'll get everything in there. And my little toiletries go in there as well. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's see. All right, no other questions yet? If anybody has one, please raise your hand and I'll get to that, because we're almost out of clothing questions. I want to talk a little bit. I want to go back to the animals and the critters. So in the Boundary Waters, we get to see all sorts of really cool animals, not just ticks and mosquitoes. We get to see dragonflies, butterflies. I see swans and loons in every trip. Of course, we get to see eagles and hawks and turtles and beavers. I see beavers, I think, at almost every trip as well. What I don't see a lot of are moose. That's really cool when you get to see them. And bear. I don't get to see bear very often. I do make sure my campsite is tidy and clean, and all the food is properly taken care of. I've only seen a bear like once, and I wasn't anywhere near it. It wasn't anywhere near me. I was actually paddling when we saw it up high on a cliff. We did not stop at that campsite. And a moose and her baby. I got to see that one year. But the most things will be like your deer, your birds and like varmints like beavers and other slinky things, and they don't bother you. They're there, they're sharing the space. I think it's incredibly lucky. We're really blessed to be able to share the space with them, and I love seeing them whenever we do. And this in June, we got to see like hundreds of dragonflies. It was really cool. I learned a lot about dragonflies. So depending on when you go, you're gonna have exposures to different animals and different critters, and also different edibles. So if that's something that you really love, and I mean like fruit and different things, there is. If I had thought about it, I would have linked up, but I might send out a little email afterwards, and I will link up to the Barefoot Paddler put together like a Boundary Waters foraging list with pictures, descriptions, and for people who like to supplement their foods with some of these. If you're not sure, if you're not a forager, then of course don't eat anything you don't know anything about. But if this is something you're used to and you feel confident in it, sometimes these guides can be really helpful. But usually, blueberries and thimbleberries and have I seen strawberries up there? Raspberries, things like that. They're all up there. They're like a little tasty treat. Mostly in July or August, if you're curious. Let's see. Okay, so that's the end of that section. I wanted to talk a little bit about portages because I have about 4 questions about portages. What time? Oh, we can fill an hour with these questions. Oh, Catherine, I'm going to come to you first. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious what you do to make sure that critters don't eat your food.
Are you talking about like chipmunks and squirrels?
Any of them.
Or bears?
All of them. What
Okay,
what do you
so
eat? Yeah.
yeah. So I think chipmunks are a really big nuisance. So let me talk about that and then I'll move up to the big guys.
Yeah.
So for things like during the day when you're out and you probably have your food sitting out on the big rock overlooking the lake and you have all your snacks out. If you walk away from camp or not watching it, zip everything up. They can move really fast and do some destruction on your food, like if you have things in Ziploc baggies or whatever. I had a few chewing right through. So I think like little rodents like that are more of a nuisance than bears. So I just try to keep everything clean and organized. All my food, you can't have glass up there. You wouldn't want anything to break. So I do use a lot of Ziploc baggies. 1, they become my garbage bags. 2, they help to minimize hopefully the smells and keeps things clean and not wet. So those are my preventions for those little dudes. And then of course everything goes into a food bag. So the U.S. Forest Service asks that everybody hangs their bag. So there's lots of tutorials on that online of how to rig up hanging bags. You might need to bring a few smaller bags if you have a giant one, food bag, but that would keep the bears away from it. Now, I know some people bring in bear barrels. I would hike that bear barrel. I would either hang it or hike it out of the camp. You just don't want the smells in the camp with you. Some people just keep it right in their camp, but those bears can still smell that. They just can't get to it. So I would always make sure to, hike it maybe out past the latrine and, wedge it underneath a tree. If you're using that bear barrel, it's waterproof. No bears can get into it. You just don't want it in your camp. I know people do it. I wouldn't recommend it because I know they can still smell it. Also, I was with a group. I'm not a fisher person, but they had a lot of fish and they left the fish guts on the shore. Don't do that. We had bears in our camp that night. I didn't see them, but I could hear them. I'm not a person that's going to go out and engage in them with them. So, they didn't come to us. We were fine. But make sure you read up on that and properly dispose of your fish guts. I didn't know that had happened until I heard the bears. So clean up after yourself. Learn how to hang your bags properly or get them out of your camp. You know, if you have one of those big bear barrels, then just like tuck it underneath a fallen tree and then come get it in the morning.
Mhm. And
Does
for
that make
the,
sense?
it does, you mentioned that you would like put all your stuff in a food bag. Is that food bag made of anything in particular? Like, assuming it's not a barrel, because I've had rodents chew through like my pocket in my backpack while
Mm-hmm.
backpacking.
Yeah, so I do a lot of water trails, so they're usually thicker portage packs, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I think mice and chipmunks are far worse than bears.
Totally.
My food bag has never been touched since I got it. I have a custom cook sewing um food bag, so it's insulated. It's pretty rugged. I haven't had any issues. I don't know if it's because it minimizes the smells as well. I don't know. But I have had issues with rodents chewing into bags in my past history. I don't have a better solution, but that's what mine's made out of now, and I haven't had any issues. I ended up going that direction versus a bear barrel, but it was almost a toss of a coin.
Thanks.
But it is food bag specific. But I've also used portage packs, and then we've lined it with like a box cardboard to help keep its shape, because that's a little bit easier for food. And maybe that minimizes it as well. Or the portage packs are also a little bit thicker than like your backpacking backpack would be a lot thinner of material. So that might also minimize it in the Boundary Waters, but I have had it happen.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I love custom cook sewing food bags. I'm glad I went with it. Oh, they also have like these little nets that go over things. So if you're going out with just a few people, I think you can even just put a net around everything. I don't know if it minimizes chipmunks and mice, but it might. I would take a look into that as well. All right. Did you have any other questions?
Nope. Thanks.
Okay. Wait, how do I lower your hand? Okay. All right. Bears. I've never had any issues with bears taking my food. Sometimes I hang it, sometimes I hide it, but it's always out of camp, and it's always responsibly dealt with. If you go through an outfitter, they're going to have their own systems, and they're going to talk to you about how to do that. Or a guide. They will give you the lowdown. If you're going by yourself, yeah, I would just study up online on YouTube. I think I have a short tutorial. I didn't do a video, but I put something in all of my materials. I have like a little teeny online thing for the Boundary Waters that I put together, with lists and itineraries and all the stuff, all the videos. And I have a little bit about bear hanging there too. It's like a little online course. So if anybody wants even more information with all the videos and tutorials and lists and guides and links, you can get that too. Okay. It's about 10 more minutes. So portages, I love portaging. I love portaging canoes. I'm happy to portage packs. I highly recommend everybody in my group trying to portage a canoe. You might find out the last day that you actually really love portaging canoes, and you missed out on 3 days of portaging canoes. So if we can get everybody to try it, whether before you go up or in the first day, see if you like it. I love it. It's an art form, but it's easy to get. So it's just balancing on your shoulders and you can just fly. Kevlar is going to be the lightest, and then Royal X is heavier, and then aluminum is the heaviest. And I've done all of them in the Boundary Waters. I'm almost 46. I'm not gonna lie, I love Kevlar now. Give me a Kevlar to portage. But when I was in my 20s, I was just flying with aluminum. So maybe go with some young folks, and if you have aluminum, which are also the cheapest canoes. I'm sure there's some lightweight fiberglass ones. I'm just not as familiar with them. I have a big chunky fiberglass one that I would never portage anywhere. It's really heavy. So consider that. And then also portaging. All portages are a little bit different. I do like to look up the portages. I have a book. Oh, I didn't bring a show and tell today. It's a Baymar book. It's in a link that I can send out to you. And I do look up the portages to get an idea of elevation and how hard they are. So some of them are pretty steep elevation gains and drops, and a lot of them are just flat. You're not going to know. And like I said, we were in that big giant storm a week and a half ago, and that changed portages a lot. So the portages, then a lot of them were washed out, not there. Some of them we had to create a new portage. We even had to do some line out. So we had to ford our canoe and gear up the river. So that's a little bit about portages. You don't quite know what you're going to get. So that's why I said always be prepared to be wet. And then I look and I research what the portages are like before I go. You can ask the local people if you're going through an outfitter. They will likely know what the portages are all like. And you can go from there. But I love them. I don't mind obstacles with them too. I think that it just adds a little spice, spice to the day, and just know that you are able to do it. You are able to do it, even if it's something that you did not expect. And all right, so elevation, yeah, there's some elevation, but a lot of it's pretty flat. We're in Minnesota, so there's that. The average length, okay, in the hundreds. So a rod is a length of a 16-foot canoe, a typical canoe. And, they can be anywhere from 5 to 700. So about a mile is, I think, about 320. Somebody might correct me, and that's okay. It's about 320 rods, and that's about a mile. So if you do that once with your canoe and you still have a pack at the other end, so you're walking a few miles that day. If it's a really flat and level portage, sometimes people will carry one pack on their back and then like a small one. I have an equipment pack. It's super tiny. So sometimes that goes on the front. But if it's a more treacherous, dangerous portage, I'd never push people to put one on the front and one on the back. It's not worth it. You need to be able to see where you're going to navigate some of the portages. So anyways, things to consider. And it's always a good time to have a snack, reapply sunscreen, check in with your group. When I brought kids, especially young kids, I would portage them across in like an ergo or I think a sling, but for sure some sort of child carrier. So I would portage them. Now that my kids are older, they portage themselves, and I give them little packs to carry for themselves. They can't carry a 50-pound portage pack, but they can carry their own gear, giving them a sense of ownership and kind of breaking them into when they are ready to do a full portage. With a big pack, and maybe they carry some paddles or life jackets. I usually wear my life jackets on the portage, and then I stick paddles on the canoe. But maybe give them to the kids to portage. Okay. Let's see. That's about portages. Does anybody have questions? There's still a few of you here. Anybody have questions about portages, gear, safety? I touched on all of the critters that you might see, packing, bringing in different people. We have 5 minutes left, and I am here to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I might fill it with this last question. It was like a 7-parter, but it's all about food and snacks. Okay, let's see. Oops, don't know how to turn that off. Hello, what's your other question?
That was gonna be my question, food and snacks. So if that was your filler, then great.
Let's talk about it. Did you have any specific question, or else I'll just leave you on here and then you can ask questions as I talk too.
Okay, yeah. I don't have any specific. I was wondering what one would bring when you're carrying everything on your person. So,
Okay, all right, good. I'll do that then. All right. All right, so when I go with, let's say, just my 4-person family, maybe another family member, there's not a whole lot, maybe 4 or 5 people. I might bring in more fresh produce or goods. Like, let's say we do a pasta, and then I might bring in like a fresh zucchini, or I'm not a meat eater either. Don't eat any meat or fish. But others do, and they might bring in like frozen pork chops. I've seen frozen steaks for the first night. It keeps the other food chilled, and then it's ready to go for that first night. So those are some of the things, but outside of apples or maybe some like little mandarins for the first couple days, I don't bring in a lot of fresh produce or things anymore. Here's why: it's heavy. It's really heavy, and I dehydrate everything. So not everything, but most things. So I will spend days dehydrating meals. They're super fast and easy. Like I said, sometimes days can get long, especially if you're with a larger group, you will move slower. That's just the way it goes. And the days can be a little bit longer, and it's so nice to just be able to pour in boiling water, and then 15 minutes later, you have a full, hearty, protein-packed, carb-packed meal. So I dehydrate everything in my food dehydrator. Eggs, I do buy freeze-dried because in a dehydrator, they're disgusting. I tried it as an experiment once, and I think wife my wife said that it can never happen again. So I dehydrate things. I bring in a lot of oatmeal, things that have already been created, granola. I bring in dehydrated milk, dehydrated peanut butter. Everything can be rehydrated, and some things I think taste better rehydrated. So that's what I do. My snack bag, though, is like full of trail mix, and I do bring in some apples and mandarins. I bring in lots of dried fruit, M&Ms. I always bring in M&Ms. They hold their shape a lot better if it's to be a hot day than other chocolate. I bring in, you could bring in marshmallows. That would be something, and that's a really quick, easy source of sugar too. So that's what I do to keep it a little bit lighter. I don't usually bring in a lot of fresh food, but I have in the past.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah. Some other things that are helpful. So I do M&Ms for the chocolate, trail mixes. I do bring in fresh cheese because it's delicious. So I plan my lunch that rolls into dinner that would use that, because that's something you would want to use up in the first day or two. Chips are going to smash and crash. I don't bring those in. Somebody asked me about that. Crackers, I do bring in crackers, but I bring them in like their box, and they usually hold their shape, or the little rice crackers are usually good. They don't usually get too crunched. I've had people bring in like freeze-dried desserts. I don't usually bring in a lot of desserts, but that was sure fun. It was like a pudding or something. I don't know, it was good. Yeah, freeze-dried is always going to be the lightest. Dehydrated is the next lightest. And then fresh produce, like you have in your own kitchen at home, is going to be the heaviest. But I focus on fats, protein, and carb, because we burn a lot of those. You're eating a little differently than maybe you would eat at home. And you need a lot more of those things, so your body can be ready to go the next day, especially if you're not base camping, you're moving every day. But either which way, plan accordingly. It's not a time to try to diet. Actually focus on the proper nutrition that you can that you need. So thank you. Any other questions about food? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it sounds that, it's almost the same as if you're backpacking multiple days, right? But it's
True.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more. I bring in a little bit more when I go on river trails and I do backpacking, but yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and then kids, I bring lots of snacks. I put them in the middle of the canoe and they can just eat those like little fruit snacks or apple sauces. I mean, kids love snacks. They're also burning everything really fast. And so I bring lots of little snacks for in the canoe. And that's maybe what you put in their bag that they can carry is their snack bag. And then I always encourage, oh, and lots of protein bars. I bring those in. Because sometimes you do need that hit. You need that sugar hit and that protein to help to keep your sugar a little bit more level. So I bring in a lot of protein bars. What was I going to say? Oh, I encourage everybody that comes with me to bring their own snack pack that they have on them. It's one that they can just clip on their bag or put in like their day bag. So they always have food. They always have a snack on them. They don't ever have to worry if they start to get hangry or they feel a blood sugar dip because everybody can experience that out there. And that's why I talk about that with all my group to try to keep things as level as possible. Yeah, okay. That kind of covers the questions that I had brought in about food and snacks. So thank you. Did you have any other questions?
No, thanks.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight, asking your really good questions. I got some I have never gotten before. So I thank you. And then I am also going to drop a couple links into the inbox and I'm going to send all this out in an email. I'm going to wait for them to send them, I don't know, the powers that be, the cloud, to send you the oh, there you go. So if you wanted more information with all the videos and lists and everything, that's where that is that I talked about. Also, if you have, I think we got a lot of everybody's questions covered that were here today, but just in case, if you do want to do a one-on-one, I'm happy to do that with you and your group. You can invite whoever you want to do it if you want to schedule something. Otherwise, I would love to do a talk like this again. I'll probably do another one next month and you can always send questions in that way, but here's a link to that if you wanted your own one-on-one to focus in on your unique needs and things. So those are the links. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I had a lot of fun. I hope that was helpful and encouraging in getting you guys out there. After you get the video, I will remember to send you out a few of those resources that I talked about so you have them on hand as well. All right. With that, I will bid you good night. Thank you.